All right, I'm online. Can y'all hear me okay? Cover girls, we good. I feel like we are. Text me if we're not, cause child, I don't know. All right, good morning, beautiful people. Hold tight. My little blanket. Okay, there we go. All right, good morning, beautiful people. Let's get this party started. Uh, okay, I feel like that's better. All right. Um, cover girls, can y'all hear me okay? Okay, just making sure. All right, so let's get this party started. Good morning. My name is Prophet Tricia J, and I am co-leader of Truth Seekers Assembly. We are a Bible-based fasting and praying church. And if you have not been with us, we've been studying Romans. No, we haven't. We've been studying Nehemiah. We already did Romans. We've been studying Nehemiah. And if you are taking notes, today's title is going to be Road to Revival, subtitle Back to the Beginning. Um, I I looked at it, I studied, I prayed, and I was just like, it kind of makes sense to just do the last 3 chapters together. So this is going to be the last time that we talk about Nehemiah, the book. So it's been a really good process. You know, God has given them a jubilee of sorts, and so they're starting to be able to come back home, per Artaxerxes, the king, and they have it set up to where now the gates are taken care of, the walls are rebuilt, we have leadership set up to live in the homeland. There is now a lottery that is happening that allows 10% of the chosen people to come and live in the homeland that has been rebuilt. And so we see all of that happen in chapter 11. And so we got Judah's descendants, we got Benjamin's descendants, we got the priests, we got the Levites, we got the gatekeepers, we got temple services. Like, these are all of the leaders that are in the place doing the things. And so where we leave off is these people have just given their support to the church, saying that, promising another covenant, right? We're going to promise that we're going to give the support to the church. This is going to be the type of giving that we give. We promise to make sure that we take care of the church and their people, okay? And so last time we talked, we said giving with a heart to give pleases God, and there's no room for compromise, right? So now they're in the process of resettling into Jerusalem. And with all of this, Nehemiah has gone back to be the cupbearer. You know, he basically took on a temporary assignment to rebuild the wall. He got favor from King Artaxerxes to do so. Now that he's done all of the things, he's back at his job post, okay? And so we see what life looks like now that this is their new normal, okay? So the rebuilding phase is over. We're getting into what our everyday lives will look like here and now. So um, we see that the priests and the Levites, they have their own property. Everybody has their own property to live on in the land, okay? Now, I thought that that was pretty cool. So then we get to chapter 12, and it talks a lot about the dedication of the wall. So I just wanted to kind of give like a high level overview of where we are, um, because it just helps to understand as we kind of walk through the text. So now that we have this understanding, the land still isn't full, right? We're getting a 10% lottery plus the people that were allowed to come back to rebuild. That's the leadership. And so this gives population to the land. This presents a strong military presence to the neighbors. Remember, people like Sanballat and Tobiah, they didn't want Nehemiah to build in this time or in this place, right? And so you can build, but if you don't have the presence, then sometimes people will think that they can overtake your land because it's nobody there. And so they're starting to repopulate the place and give it a presence, if you will, okay? And so I love that in chapter 12 we see Nehemiah hold like this grand opening ceremony to dedicate the wall. And I love that even today, if you were to go over to Israel, this wall is still there. Okay, so we get over to chapter 12, and I want to read before we just start jumping into any additional notes. Nehemiah, where do I want to go? Let's go to 13 actually, because this is where it gets good. So they start to dedicate the wall in chapter 12, and we get to see all of the details of this process in chapter 13. Okay, so yeah. All right, so we're going to go 12 first. Let's do 12:27. So Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 27. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sent for the Levites wherever they lived and brought them to Jerusalem to celebrate the joyous dedication with thanksgiving and singing, accompanied cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers gathered from the region around Jerusalem, from the settlements of the Netophathites and Beth Gilgal, and from the fields of Geba as Mevath, for they had built settlements for themselves around Jerusalem. And after the priests and Levites had purified themselves, they purified the people, the city gates, and the wall. So I thought that that was really, really interesting, because while we're in this process of rebuilding and revival, we're seeing that purification is a huge part of the process. And so I have been telling you all, God's going to call you to fast or consecrate a little bit more in this season, now that we are in the spiritual new year, Rosh Hashanah, okay? And so you'll wake up one day and think that you're good and you're going to go on with your regularly scheduled program, right? And then he's going to be like, no, you're going to pray. You're going to fast today. You're going to turn over your plate. So I love to call out that the first thing about this dedication was purification. Okay, and these people are giving thanks on the dung and water gates. Remember, we talked about all these water gates, and so during this dedication process, we're seeing the walls that the gates that were built. Now they're utilizing them. Okay, and so they give thanks on the dung and the water gates. And the second procession of thanksgiving is on the broad wall, the Ephraim gate, the old gate, the fish gate, and the sheep gate. And all was to the gate of the guard. Okay, they sang songs, they offered great sacrifices. And I just thought that this was really, really great, because you're seeing a process, you're seeing a ritual, how they're starting off, okay? And so now they're starting to read the Torah publicly. And every time that they read the Torah publicly, we see some stuff goes down. Like, they're like, oh, whoa. We doing some stuff that we shouldn't be doing again. Every single time. And I'm not mad at that because at least they are reading it and like course correcting as they go, right? And so they're reading the Torah publicly and learning about what God says, only to find that they're still not keeping some of the commandments by mistake. Okay, so mistakenly, they're not keeping some of the commandments. Hold on, I feel like I gotta sneeze. No? Okay. All right, allergies. Be nice. Let's be friends today. No? Okay. Well, let's try again. I'll be glad when I get my shot this week. I can definitely tell the difference the first week I get my shot and the last week that it's like wearing off. So, excuse me. Um, so with that, um, I'm gonna go to verse 45 in chapter 12. And well, no, I'm gonna go to verse 44 first. On that same day, men were placed in charge of the rooms that housed the supplies, contributions, first fruits, and tents. They legally required portions from the priests and the Levites were gathered from the village fields because Judah was grateful to the priests and Levites who were serving. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification along with the singers and gatekeepers as David and his son Solomon had prescribed. So they're looking at the text and walking it out. Okay, they're looking at the Torah and walking it out. Um, so chapter 13 is where it really gets real. Okay. And so this is where we see a restoration for the people. And so at the time of the book of Moses was read publicly to the people. I'm just reading straight from chapter 13. The command was found written in it that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God because they did not meet the Israelites with food and water. They had basically like enmity in their hearts toward Israel, okay? So they weren't supposed to enter into covenant with them. Instead, they hired Balaam against them to curse them. But our God turned their curse into a blessing. How many of you know just because they curse you don't mean it's going to be a curse? Because when God is with you, he'll turn somebody's curse into a blessing. How do you think we get to eat in the presence of our enemies? He lays a table before us in the presence of our enemies. So, yeah, if your enemy is watching you eat, chances are they were trying to do something. They were trying to poison you. They were trying to make sure you didn't get the platform. But every brick that people throw at you, God will allow you to use to, build you up. So don't be tripping on crazy stuff that people do. People are going to people every single day. That's one thing you can trust people to do is be human. Okay. And so we see that God is such a good God that he turned the curse into a blessing. And so when we get to verse 3, oh, excuse me. When they heard the law, they separated all those of mixed descendants from Israel. And so we've had this talk consistently. We see that Solomon had an issue, and we see that as we are marrying, I want to say interracially, but it's early, so I just roll with it. We just gonna roll with it. As they marry interracially, in this instance, it's not right because the women are teaching them to fall away from God, and so this is just something that you see culturally anyway. Um, the woman is the nurturer and the teacher of the house. And so when you marry a foreign woman, she's going to make sure that her children do not forget her mother's language. So they're going to learn their mother's language. You have to make sure that they know your language too. They're going to learn their mother's culture. You have to make sure that they learn your culture too. And I'm not going to get into the semantics of that because I could go. But it's just that's just normal. That's just what we see. And so because that is normal, because that is the way of the mother, right? God is giving us guidelines of things that we need to do. Make sure that you don't marry this type of person because they will teach you their ways. They're going to teach you their customs. They're going to teach you their systems. They're going to teach you their languages, right? This is what we do in Babylon when we indoctrinate people. We teach you the way of the land. We send the people to like college or university, as some people call it, and you learn the way of the land. You're going to learn this system. And hopefully, you forget everything that you learned growing up because this is the new way of life. This is the new system that we want you to take on. And so God sees that, and that's why He puts this in place for us. No, you don't want to do that because you can't forget where you come from. And so that's why we love Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, because these church boys who grew up in church or is taken away from their land, get indoctrinated into the system of Babylon. They learn for however many years before they have to go before the king, and he inspects them to see if they can go to the next level. And even then, God allowed them to go to the next level, right? God allowed them to be used in leadership in Babylon, but they were literally the pinnacle of in this world and not of it, okay? They were literally four church boys doing the things. And so we don't see that here in Nehemiah. I'm just giving that example of what it should be like. That's like the right thing to do. In Nehemiah, that's not what we see. And so they're starting to try to do the things, but you have to remember that they have just come from exile. And so they have been living the last 70 some odd years by the way of Babylon. They've been in this system, and this is how they have been doing the things. Okay, and so let's go to verse 4 in chapter 13 because this one was really, really good and key. Now, before this, the priest Eliashib had been put in charge of storerooms of the house of our God. He was a relative of Tobiah. Pause, because y'all remember Sanballat and Tobias, they didn't even like Nehemiah. They didn't like these people. They didn't want them building. They had enmity in their heart against God, okay? But he is a priest in the land of Jerusalem. So that's crazy. And so verse 5 says, and he had prepared a large room for Tobiah where they previously stored grain offerings, the frankincense, the articles, and the tents of grain, new wine, and fresh oil prescribed for the Levites, singers, and gatekeepers, along with the contributions for the priests. Because that's crazy, because my first thought is when the cat's away, the mice will play. How do we get here? Because you know that that's some beef, right? Like, we're not, that is definitely, we're not supposed to be doing that, okay? So this is a grievance. This is a grievance that God is not going to be happy with. This is also a grievance that Nehemiah is, he's not going to be happy with it, okay? Because what we're seeing is Eliashib is being an inside trader. He is trading information over to Tobiah. And they have a close relationship. Like, he cares for this person so much so he's making room for him in the house of God when he is an enemy of God. And so he has enmity in his heart toward Israel by marriage because he is married. He's a relative of Tobiah, so he's married one of the women that we just learned you should not be marrying because they turn your hearts away from God, and by this friendship with Tobiah. And so this is something that we have to be conscious of today. We have to, and I'm a person that I'm usually like, I could be friends with almost anybody. And it's so funny because if you don't have boundaries, if you don't have discernment, if you don't have wisdom, people will always, always, always try to evangelize their beliefs to you. And like I know, one thing that is difficult for a believer to do is to evangelize their beliefs at work. I mean, you would be surprised if I hope you wouldn't, but you'd be surprised by how many people, especially just because I just have a nice disposition, are like, we should go on a nature walk and we can go and worship rocks. You should come with me to get tarot cards read and that sort of thing. And it is totally acceptable. Let me invite somebody to church. I'll probably be in HR. Okay, like, you just don't lead with those things at work. But people are very comfortable to invite you into their lives, especially when it is a life of sin. And so you have to be disciplined and use wisdom. I mean, use wisdom and how you don't get caught up in those things, because we're supposed to always be the thermostat. You have to make sure that the life that you're living and the things that you're doing are not influenced by people, but you are supposed to be the influencer of the people. And that is not what's happening here. Eliashib has allowed his marriage into his, I'll call it his interracial marriage. I don't know what else to call it. I'm sorry. And I'm not against interracial marriage today. I'm just using it in this context, okay? He's allowing this to cloud his loyalty and judgment to God, okay? And we see this a lot in today's land. We get caught up in the relationships that we have with our friends. We don't want to disrespect them or make them feel uncomfortable because we've grown, we've changed. Our views in life have evolved. God has grabbed a hold of us spiritually, whatever the case may be. And so we kind of walk around on eggshells when it comes to our beliefs and the things that we do. And there's a little bit of compromise in there, okay? Just a smidge of compromise. And so what we're seeing right here with the priest, he's a priest. He's supposed to be a man of the cloth, which is a person of high integrity, doing the right thing always, even when nobody's watching. He's not doing the right thing. He's showing compromise. He's showing that his loyalty lies with his wife and her family is against God. And so he's basically showing that he is against God. Okay. So, while all this is happening, Nehemiah is not in Jerusalem because he had returned to King Artaxerxes in Babylon. And so it was only later he ended up having to ask the king for another leave. He asked for a leave in the beginning of the story, so that way he could rebuild the wall. He was so grieved that he wanted to rebuild the wall. And King Artaxerxes did give him, he granted him the leave and the resources to do so, but he did go back to Babylon. Excuse me. And so he's hearing about this and he is grieved, like greatly grieved. I mean, distress grieved. Like, I gotta go back home. Like, I need to leave to go back home and set some things straight, is literally his mindset. And so I love this because I don't know. I kind of like to see people in the Bible do real people things, because when you go to church, sometimes they kind of dehumanize people and they make you think that there's only, you always have to be meek and quiet. You have to sound like Nar Smith to be considered a lady. You have to do all of these nice things. And yes, we know 70 times 70, 70 times 7, you're going to turn your cheek and all the things, right? But there is this thing called righteous indignation. There's this thing called righteous anger. Remember, the Lord says, be angry, do not sin. And so we see once Nehemiah discovers that this is happening, he comes back home, right? But also, once he figures out the evil that Eliashib has done on behalf of Tobiah by providing him a room in the courts of God. Like, how do you provide the enemy of God a room in his house? That's wicked work right there. Okay. What he does is he's so mad he ordered the rooms to be purified, but first he threw everything out. And he threw everything out. Like, you see him have an angry moment, and it's not written that this moment is one that displeases God, but it's also not written as that this is a moment that God is favorable of. Obviously, the intent is pure, so we know that. So he throws out all of Tobiah's household possessions out of the room, and then he orders that the room is purified. And I thought that was good to call out, because sometimes it's really, really important to clean your house. I know I just seen this book, and every time I talk about it to y'all, I think about showing it, and then I don't know where it is. I just redid my bookcase. bookcases, and I want to find it, so hold on. Because it's so good for us. We have to make sure we're in a place where we are cleaning our houses spiritually. Um, you just have to get to a space where you are doing it because it's really really good for you to do. Oh my gosh, every time, I swear I literally just seen this book, and it's not a big book. It's not even a long book. Found it. Okay, I knew it. I knew it. And I set it on the side so that way I could show it to you all. Spiritual house cleaning. It is a small, quick read. See, you see that? Like, you literally can read it in one day. And this is how you protect your home and family from spiritual pollution. It shows you 8 steps to purifying your home, but also showing you how you want to avoid legalism and superstition, but also recognizing forbidden and defiled possessions. Okay, basically, you want to remove the enemy's ability to access your home by reestablishing God's power and protection over your family. Okay, this book right here, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. I learned some things in this book, and I was just like, whoa, okay. Throwing some things away. So I thought that this was really, really cool, and I've been wanting to call this out for you all for quite a while. But when I see Nehemiah go through and purify everything, it reminds me, guess what? We need to be purifying, and cleaning our homes. And so, and I don't have my watch on. It's October. In October, I call it October. I don't know why, but I just kind of go in and deep clean everything. That's when I assess and reassess what's happening in the household, pulling things out, getting rid of clothes, swapping out summer clothes for fall clothes, re-cleaning the closets, like just checking the kids' stuff, getting rid of things that they've outgrown or don't need to have in the house anymore, that sort of thing. And so that is the process that we're seeing Nehemiah go through in chapter 13, okay? And so he ordered all of the rooms to be purified, verse 9, and he had the articles of the house of God restored there, along with the grain offering and frankincense. Okay, he also found out, this is the second grievance, that the portions for the Levites had not been given. Each of the Levites and their singers performing the service had gone back to his own field. Basically, they were doing the work of the Lord and the people weren't paying, so they went back to their regular jobs. They went back to their regular jobs to get money, okay? Nehemiah rebuked the officials, asking why the house of God had been neglected, because literally in chapter 10, we had just promised that we were going to give all of these offerings, the first fruit, the tenth, and all of the things to make sure that we were taking care of the people of God. So this is where we get, will a man rob God? Absolutely, he will, because as soon as Nehemiah went back, they totally forgot to do the thing. And so Nehemiah rebukes the people. Okay, he is come home to set things in order. And so this is where people would not like Nehemiah today. He would absolutely be canceled, because cancel culture does not like to be corrected. Okay, they do not want to have conversations, and it's okay to be mad with somebody. It is okay to not like what somebody does, but I don't believe that everybody just needs to be canceled. So I make little jokes and I'll say good morning to everybody except for somebody. I'm not saying that person is canceled when I'm not speaking to that person. I'm calling out that they made a mistake. They need to own it. I'm calling you to the carpet. You got to own that mistake. Let's apologize, fix it, and then we can move on. Okay, that is a grievance. That is, you have to have healthy confrontation, and that's not what we do. Shoot, we don't even see people get set down like they need to, and they get publicly restored. We need to fix that. We need to see that, because when you see those things, you see it it creates an atmosphere where people are not afraid to share their sin, because they're they're not going to be ostracized. They're going to be helped, and we build a circle around them to correct them and love on them and build them up and restore them. But that's not what we see in church today. I'm gonna get off of that though. Okay, so the Levites hadn't been given their portion, and so Nehemiah is coming home and rebuking everybody. He is setting things in order, and that doesn't feel good. Sometimes when people are rebuking you, it will not feel good. Most times it won't feel good because it is irritating your flesh. So your feelings are going to be hurt, right? And the thing that you're doing that you probably want to do that you shouldn't be doing, you're going to be sad to have to let that thing go. And so this is where the children of Israel are, because what's happening is, um, once they bring their holding, what they've been holding, um, the people get restored to their rightful position, right? But what's happening is they are forgetting. They're falling into patterns of disobedience. They're falling into patterns of failure and backsliding. And so, the point of them coming back home is to be brought back from exile and to thrive. And so, these people forgot their God again in certain instances. And you literally just gave God permission to, curse you if you don't follow, the guidelines of the covenant. And literally, as soon as Nehemiah gets back to work and goes back to Babylon, they are back to their regularly scheduled program. And this reminds me that we fail just like Israel over and over and over again. But God is so gracious that He is still with us. He still loves us. And so I won't touch on too much of that because I just really want to get into Nehemiah is still coming in hot, okay? He is still coming in hot. He's frustrated with these people disobeying the Lord and the covenants and the systems that have been set in place. And he's just like in verse 14, remember me for this, my God, and don't erase the deeds of faithful love I have done for the house of my God and its services. Okay, he's just like, please, I'm trying to keep these people from sinning. You know my heart in doing this project, Lord. Don't let it be in vain. Don't erase the deeds that I've done. And so he continues to go on and rebuke people. This is the third grievance that we're going to discuss, because they did have three grievances that were big, big, big enough for him to come home. The next grievance was that, baby, the children was working on the Sabbath. Because what? Why are you working on the Sabbath? And we know that this is not what we're supposed to do. I mean, and it was so bad when you get to uh, verse 18. He says, didn't your ancestors do the same? So that our God brought all this disaster on us and on this city, and now you are rekindling his anger against Israel by profaning the Sabbath. Basically, what was happening is, it was almost like flea market style. All the people outside of the city were coming into the city, setting up shop, and selling them things on Sunday. God was not pleased with that, because they were technically doing extra work on the Sabbath. And Nehemiah was, warning the people. He was warning the people, and he begins to lock the gate to keep the people out and keep the children of Israel from sinning. This reminds me of those strict parents that never let their kids do anything. And it's like, but guess what? Because they have the heart to sin, as soon as they get the opportunity, they are going to sin, okay? As soon as you let them go to school, they're going to act the fool. They're going to do stuff that they shouldn't be doing, because it is in the heart. And you are trying to control the body, but you have to get the heart to be in a space to where it wants to obey. And when there is control, you're trying to just control. It makes the heart hard, but the heart was already hard, so it just makes it harder, right? And so Nehemiah is so fed up with these people. I love him, okay, because he's like, I'm telling y'all, don't come over here. And the next time you come over here, I'm gonna have to use force. Nehemiah is willing to fight these people, okay? He's willing to lay hands on them, and not in the holy way, okay? Because you are causing my people to sin. So if I gotta fight you, that's what we're going to do. And I just thought that that was a good call out. Like, we get to see him be human, but have this righteous indignation against, his people sinning. And so Nehemiah, he keeps warning that they're inviting disaster to come back into their lives by breaking these covenants. And so it is really, really important because he's so mad that now he's praying to God, asking him to remember that these people are defiling the priesthood and the covenant. And remember, when they were establishing the priesthood and the covenant, they accepted the full consequences of the curse that was wrapped inside of the covenant. So Nehemiah is asking God to stand on business with this. Okay, don't let them get away with this. Remember that this is what they promised, and now that they're not doing it, this the result that they agreed to, and they were going to accept this curse. Okay, he is not happy that they are rebelling against the covenant. And we see him so much so he is beating people up, literally pulling their hair out, like doing so many different things. And again, this is not mentioned in a an unfavorable way or a favorable way. It's just like this is what's happening, and he is doing everything that he can to help the people, even like snatching them out of the fire of sin. Like he's forcefully snatching the people out of the fire of sin by any means necessary at this point. Okay, and verse 23 is it 20, no, 25, he says, I rebuked them, I cursed them, I beat some of their men and pulled out their hair. I forced them to take an oath before God and said, you must not give your daughters into marriage or take their sons and their daughters as wives for sons yourselves, because didn't King Solomon of Israel sin in matters like this? There was not a king like him among many nations. He was loved by his God and made him king over all of Israel, yet foreign women drew him into sin. And the issue is in verse 23, he came back and saw Jews who had married from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. And so half of their children spoke the language of their mothers. They didn't know the Hebrew language, they couldn't speak the Hebrew language, but they could speak their mother's language. Remember, I was just telling you about this earlier. And so this was so much a sin that he was beating the people up. Okay, because you are causing our people to forget again. We've already gone through this. We are reading the Torah again to remember. You are causing the people to forget again, because the mother is always going to teach her culture. And so you have to make sure that you're marrying within the culture so that way your culture does not die. And this is something that we see a lot with interracial couples today, just black and white couples. It's usually, I don't see color. We don't raise our children to see color. You should, and you absolutely should. Because when you get into a garden, there are so many different fruits and vegetables. There's so many different colors. We want to see the color. I know colorblind people who make a huge effort to see color, and then we are lazy and don't want to see color because we don't like confrontation. Your children should absolutely see color. They should. It's a gift. And so I'm not saying that, again, I don't have a problem with interracial marriage, but if that is what you're going to do, you have to know that the mother is going to teach her culture. That's just the way that's the way of the land. That's how this has always been. And this Bible is older than me. And so if that is what is going to happen, you have to know this. You have to be wise enough to teach your children their culture. You can't let them miss that, because now we got two. And so we're trying to figure out which one is the prevalent one. We're butting heads here. This was an issue in the Bible. You just have to actually do your part in the real world, and it won't be an issue. Teach the Bible, yes, but there's always going to have questions about where they go and where they come from and all the things. We see this all the time. Anybody that's been adopted, they want to know where they come from. So what that you've been a great actual parent, as an adoptive parent, they want to know where they come from. This is a natural thing, and so we have to stop being scared of the thing and talk about it and prepare for it. You just got to know these things, is what I'm saying. Okay. So Nehemiah is sick with it. He is not happy with the way that these people are acting. He's literally locking them in and trying to force them to not disobey. And so we get to a space where we see, although the people have been restored, right? The people have been restored. They have not yet been transformed, because it's so easy for them to just go back into their regular ways, their regularly scheduled program. And this is why I always say membership like does not matter. We have a lot of mega churches that are memberships, and they're really just a grave holding site. It's like the walking dead in the church. Nobody's really alive. Nobody's lives are being changed. Nobody's being transformed. Pastors, bishops, apostles don't want to talk about hard things because they don't want their money to stop coming in. But we're just holding space for these people to go to hell. So, not really a fan of that. Also, when we do like altar calls and that sort of thing, you can't say that so many people got saved. Like, you can't say that because you don't know. So many people, you can say so many people came to the altar, but that's a hard work. And some people just do things to do them. Lip service. We know people that go to church every Sunday and they still cut up every Saturday. A lot of the musicians are always plagued with fornication. That is a issue. That is something we know to be true, and they have to fight against it. That's just an easy wall, to get to the front line. We know these things. We've seen these things happen over and over and over again. So I'm saying all that to say, these people have been restored. They have not been transformed. You see the same thing in church every Sunday. A lot of people will just go to say that they go to check off a box to say that they did a good thing, but they have not been transformed. And so what we've learned in the book of Nehemiah is that these people have changed location several times, right? They were starting in Jerusalem, and then they were exiled to Babylon and the surrounding cities, and now they've been able to move back to Jerusalem and its surrounding cities. They made all of these changes. They moved to all of these places, right? But their hearts have not yet been changed. Okay? So you can change churches, but if your heart isn't changed, you're just changing locations. Stone hearts produce fruitless results. And so we're in a space where we need new hearts of flesh. We need a heart that is permeable, that God can use and put on the potter's, and use the potter's clay and put on the potter's wheel and really rework it. Your heart needs to be tender. Okay, and so you have to know that doing the things is lip service if there is no intention in your heart behind it. You can't just check the box. We saw that with the priest that married Tobiah's family. He was literally just checking the box. Eliashib was just checking the box. So much so that he got elevated to leadership. And God has shown that I'm rebuilding your walls. I'm pulling you out of exile. I'm rebuilding your walls. I restored your church. I restored your gates. I restored you spiritually. I restored your finances. I reaffirmed the covenant. Like, he's doing all of the things, and literally what we're saying is we keep failing over and over again. So Nehemiah, of course, does not end on like a great note. Nehemiah is beating people up. He's locking people in. He's trying to forcefully convince them not to sin. Like, he's forcing them to, take the covenants, but it's a matter of the heart. And so during this season of revival, I am going to challenge you to look at your heart. Don't make excuses, but look at your heart. What are the things that you are compromising on? And we all have some. I promise we all have some things that we could stand and do better with. And so I was really, really thirsty, and I need more to drink. I'm not going to lie. But I want to go to Romans chapter 5, verse 8 real quick. And it says that, but God proves his own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And so I just want to draw the parallel that we see these children of Israel, right? They keep falling. They keep falling. They keep sinning. They keep falling into sin. They keep backsliding. They keep failing. They keep making the mistakes, right? And it's so easy for us to read it and be like, they just need to do better. Why they acting like this? They just need to do better. But how many times do we fall? How many times do we sin? How many times do we backslide? How many times do we go back into idol worship? We do it just like they did. And God still made sure, to know that, guess what? I'm still going to send Christ for you. This was still intended for you, even though you weren't perfect. And so I think the great thing that I think about now with my walk is, it doesn't matter how much I read, and I read a lot. It doesn't matter how much I study, and I study a lot. It doesn't matter how much I fast, and I fast a lot. Like, me doing all of those things is just, it's works. It's filthy rags. Like, it means nothing, because it puts me in a space to where I could be like a modern day Pharisee and say, I don't do this, and I don't do that, and I follow these rules, and I follow these rules, and I do this in the Torah, and my heart is hard. And I remember posting in our little private group how this man that has 1,000 demons is able to recognize who Jesus is. But the men with 1,000 scriptures, the Pharisees, they know all of the scriptures by heart. They weren't even able to recognize that he was the true king coming. And so I say all that to say, we're going to fall. And I think that it's really, really important for you to know that it's not about your fall, it's about your recovery, right? But you can't be saved by works. There's nothing that you could have done to be saved. And so I say that because it's just a cautionary tale not to become like the Pharisees, not to get on your high horse and talk about the things that you don't do. I don't sin, I don't fornicate, I'm not having sex, and then guess what? I promise you're going to fall in some way, because your heart gets hard and haughty because of the things that you don't do, is what we end up seeing. And we just don't want to do that, okay? But even though the book of Nehemiah doesn't end on like a high note, right? It doesn't end making you feel good, right? It doesn't end and you're like, yes, that was a victory. Like, Nehemiah is not happy with what is happening, but he is trying his best. And he showed, he's like, God, just remember that I did this out of a good heart. But also stand on business when it comes to these people that's not keeping their promise to you too. And so it doesn't necessarily end on a high note, but God still promises to bring restoration. God still promises that restoration is coming, and we all know that restoration is Jesus coming. So if you go to Psalms 126, sorry, it talks about God promising to bring restoration to the people. And so these people have been, you see my hands, I'm trying to move them. They've been reaffirmed. They've been reaffirmed. They've been, moved. And so now it's time to make sure that the heart is in a place to receive. Where we're going, I'm close my Bible because I already know ain't nothing I got to say left in here. Where we're going is going to be a different space. We're going to continue to see things that we've never seen before. But it's going to be a matter of heart. I mean, I'm talking about even the way that we vote has to be a matter of the heart. And this is not a season where you get to be silent. Those who are silent are complicit. And that's always been the case anyway. But yeah, you don't get to be silent anymore. Time out for that. And so when it comes to voting, yeah, you gotta make sure your heart is clear on that one. It's not about anything but whether or not we love the world, which is Babylon, or we love the kingdom. And that's just that. The policies, I'm so sick of seeing these commercials. I don't know what to do with myself. I just paid for YouTube premium because I can't see another commercial. I can't do it. I don't want to see another commercial until December. Like, no, thank you. Okay, hard pass. But I want you to get to a space to where you are clear with where your heart is. A lot of us have stone hearts. and we get dressed and we play church, but it's time out for that. It's time to really be deeply rooted in your word. It's time to be having an intimate relationship with the Lord, and that looks different for every single person. But there's still a standard, right? There are still things that you do to have that intimacy. And so reading the Bible, that's going to be important. I'm telling you, if I could pay for more commercials, I would. And I don't even watch TV. Okay, so like I'm a learner. I love the YouTube University. I think that's really why I like TikTok, because I learn more on there than you know. I'm a learner. I'm a student. I'm forever a student. But the commercials, oh God, I'm ready to just get this over with. But we are in a pendulum state, so it's really just a telltale sign of where the hearts of the people are. And I'm telling you, I'm just based on what I see. I feel like the people want a free Barabbas. They don't really want Jesus. That's where this election is going. Free Barabbas. So whoever we get, it is an indication of where the heart of the people are. And I'm telling you right now, the hearts of the people are stony. They are not fleshly, tender, able to hear from God. And this is why it's so important for us to be praying. This is why it's important for us to make sure that we're on top of our watch times and that sort of thing, because you're going to see a rise of watchmen and prayer warriors. You're going to see more prayer parties and just spaces where we just worship, because that is needed in this time. Because if we could just humble ourselves and really do what Abraham did to save Lot, just to save Lot, okay, just to save Lot and his family. He really did go to bat with God, so much so that God was mad with him. Like, if you ask me again, I'm about to smite you too, okay? God do not be playing. God don't be playing, okay? So thank God for Jesus being a buffer for us. Um, but we need to be consistently praying and on our post. So when you're waking up in the middle of the night, when you can't sleep, you need to be prayerful. Because, yeah, it's a lot of things happening. It's a lot of things happening. It's a lot of wars happening that we're not calling wars. And I don't think that that's going to stay. I think going into next year, they're going to be called wars. Um, I think they are. I'm going to see a lot more devastation, a lot of judgment. Even this election is a judgment. We're moving into a season of atonement. So um, we'll talk more about that too. I'll probably do more on during the fast, because we'll be fasting for 7 days. So I'll probably talk more about atonement then. Um, but congratulations, we finished Nehemiah. So I'm challenging you to make sure your heart is right. Make sure you let go of those idols. We've been talking about idols, shoot, almost a year now. And just get into a space to where you want to obey God, because that's really what he wants. When you do sin, because we all sin, right? It's just like James when he says, when trials come, because they're going to come. Um, you feel a pricking in your heart, like it vexes your spirit. It grieves you when you sin, when you make a mistake. I'm really hard on myself when I make mistakes, so I don't need you to punish me. I promise I'm probably punishing myself way more than I need to. Um, so that is the Holy Spirit being close to you. That is Holy Spirit being evident in your life. Um, but the more that you don't listen and you turn away from the correction and that vexation feeling, the Holy Spirit begins to just kind of shrivel up, and they don't he don't want to live in that type of space. He don't want to live in a space that's not pure and clean and repentant, right? Because you're not going to be perfect. That was only Jesus's job. So I'm saying all that to say, just watch the state of your heart in this season. And so, yeah, he's going to call you to, he's going to call you out of some things. He's going to call you out of some associations. He's going to call you out of some relationships. He's going to call you out of some organizations. And if you don't move, if you don't move, it's going to impact your heart. It's going to make your heart harder and less tender. And what we need is new hearts of flesh, because stone hearts don't produce God results. And in this season, you want to be as close to God as possible. I feel like that's all I can say right now. I'm just thinking, I feel like that's it. Thursday, Minister Tiffany will be on Facebook Live. Make sure y'all share her stuff. Saturday, we're on 1 Corinthians 11. And we will be moving to the book of John. We will be moving to the book of John, excuse me. And the book of John is, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they all tell really similar stories. So that means we're going to end this year in the book of John. They all tell similar stories from a different perspective, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But John is not that. John is a book where you had to be there. John is a book where there was lots of intimacy. And this is a really prophetic book too. And so, deepening your relationship with God, getting to know the things that he cares about, just seeing different levels of intimacy that he had with several different people, I think it'll be really, really good for us. Of course, you know I didn't pick this. I don't be knowing what we're doing until he be like, yeah, you should do this next. And you know, whatever he says, I'm going to do. So we will be reading John 1. We will be reading John 1 on Sunday. So, see, I'm already in it. I've been in it for some weeks now. Lots of notes. It's really rich. It's really rich. It's really, really good. So, if you can get ahead, I want you to read it. Don't read to understand. Just read and ask God. That's probably the best. Like, don't be trying to figure it out. Like, the Spirit has to show you some stuff. A commentary won't give you everything. I promise I won't. It's really just sitting with the text, wrestling with the text, meditating on it, asking God for a revelation. That's going to be your best bet. That requires some time to slow down and some intimacy. And we all need that in this season. So I'm going to leave it at that. I love you. I hope you have a super great rest of your week. And I will see you this week. I'll be putting Bible study videos back up. So keep praying for me. I love you. And we'll talk soon. Okay, bye.